Michelle, just for giving us a good scope of the presidential candidates who have handed in their candidature and, of course, expecting Kenyans to vote. And what we want to talk about this morning is mainly the presidential debate that is going to be taking place and starting next month. But let me introduce the panel that we have this morning. And to my extreme left, we have Eric Latif, who is a journalist. Good morning, and thank you for joining us, Eric. We also have Eric Odur, who is the Secretary General for Kenya Union of Journalists. Good morning, and thank you for joining us. And continuing with us, he was with us earlier on, Evans Wafula, who is a journalist as well. Karibuni sana, gentlemen. And just to make it clear, I did have a list of ladies who were to come, but they cancelled at the last minute because we've been getting issues with what they call manels, panels that are just made of testosterone. So our apologies for that, but there you go. That's just on the side. But now, let's talk about the presidential debate that are coming up. And it's, of course, not anything new. Just looking at that story given by Ken Aseka earlier on, it's something that started off a while ago. But let me start with you, Latif, Eric Latif. And maybe what is really meant to be the objective of a presidential debate?
Well, I think basically the objective of such debates is to inform the public on what the candidates think and what policies they propose and how they intend to run a government should they be elected. It's basically a podium for the candidates to express themselves, to sell their policies, to sell their agenda, to sell their manifesto, and say, and answer certain questions based on certain thematic areas that the moderators will come up with. So it's just basically that. It's a campaign platform for a unified campaign platform where all of you are getting the same unified share of eye, and you speak about specific issues and you express yourselves. So from that, it's where the electorate should be able now to look and see, do I actually believe Michael or do I believe Evans?
All right, Odur, what should the pressure be in terms of making sure that all who are running for president appear? Take an example of Uganda, where Yoweri Museveni at some point decided he is not going to appear for the presidential debate, and this could be interpreted in many ways.
Thank you, Mike. I think there's an issue that I think we also need to discuss. Why are we having a presidential debate? Because in some other countries where we are borrowing from, because we are borrowing from other countries, what has happened in other countries. And in these countries, leadership is taken very seriously. And even if you look at the US, for example, where we are borrowing from, there is a permanent commission that actually deals with presidential debates. And there are criteria that actually they set and the threshold that only presidential candidates who pass certain threshold are the ones who are supposed to participate in a presidential debate. And I think that's what we should also be borrowing. Probably we have just started, but in future, we expect a situation whereby we'll come up with a criteria. If you do not meet the criteria, you do not participate. So that we can have enough time. The tragedy is here, we are 19. We are having around 19 presidential candidates. Then we are going to put them on the podium. Do we have enough time for discussion and interrogation on some of the manifesto that are going to be presented by politicians or the presidential candidate? I don't think so. So that is why it's important that we have the criteria.
Yes. But now, what sort of criteria would you come up with? Because then it would be viewed as discrimination. Remember, the last presidential debate that we had, they even had to come up with 2 other podiums.
Exactly.
Towards the last minute. One of them
you see, like for the US or other countries that have been practicing before, the Commission on Presidential Debate, like for the US, is a bipartisan team that actually is permanent. It is there. They carry out their own opinion polls so that they can come up with a criteria, say that a presidential candidate who does not get certain ranking or polls in opinion polls, then you do not participate. So I think in Kenya, I think those are things that we should be discussing in future.
Okay. Bwana Evans, your thoughts on possibly how our presidential debates are so far, and maybe areas that we need to improve, just like Evans is mentioning?
I think from what Latif said is that the essence of this presidential debate, first I think, is that they give the candidates opportunity not only to outline their policies, but also to demonstrate their ability to govern. And that's the most critical element of presidential debate. But in the manner as our democracy develops, as we grow democratically, we have seen this space actually widening. And I think even other countries within East Africa will borrow from Kenya. I think we are really, it's a good way we are doing it. But how we need to do it and make it more effective is that from what my colleagues have said, I think we need to see, for example, the Independent Electoral Commission to also being part and parcel, because yesterday I saw it's only the media players coming up together and saying that this is how we are going to conduct. But I think the IEBC, for example, should be at least also in the forefront of this, so that they can be able to also make it look like it's a pre-qualification for candidates who meet certain criteria to be able to participate in this presidential election. And I think that's how we need to go forward.
All right. Latif, do you agree that there needs to be a criteria? Because given that right now we've only highlighted 10 of the presidential candidates, and like he says, maybe there could be 19.
Somebody actually on Twitter just sent me a picture saying there are no 18 presidential candidates complete with the names. So there are 8 more out there that we haven't mentioned.
Yeah, when we have so many, is it likely to water down the whole weight of what this is supposed to deliver?
Well, let's just put it plainly. It's obviously going to water down. You have 18 people. Even if you've conducted interviews on panels, I mean, you've not invited 18 of us to this show. If we were 18 people, how much time would each of us get?
And that would affect the quality of what we're trying to get across.
It completely affects the quality. When you do moderated sessions or panel discussions, you definitely want to have few people so that you can bring out the essence of what you wanted to discuss. You have 18 people, that's too many people. Now, let's first of all give credit. By the time the team was announcing the dates for these debates yesterday, they started a long time ago. They even had time during the American presidential debates. They went to see and to attend those presidential debates. They had discussions with the commission that organizes the American presidential debate. Of course, we are starting somewhere. Last year, I mean, in the last election, they started somewhere. They came up with a criterion of saying, we're just going to go with the main horses. Donkey went to court. Donkey was brought into called a horse. We need to have, to answer the question, we need to have a criterion, yes, that says who participates in a debate. And then if, for example, right now that we don't have a criterion, then we should maybe divide it and say we're going to have 4 debates, 4 per panel or 6 per panel, something like that, so that we have enough time. Right now I'm saying if we're going to have 18 people,
it would be disastrous to try and have all of them on one panel. But again, when you talk about dividing them even into different debates, that still speaks to time. There is a cost effect to it, and airtime is quite expensive. So really, we don't have time for that. So
maybe that's a criterion: pay for the airtime.
Pay for the airtime. Odor, how do we get? Because that was my next question. What criteria then do we use? Because you don't want to be seen to be partisan, especially as a media house or as media houses coming to say these are the people we're supporting or we think they have an agenda. What gives us the right to think that somebody else does not have an agenda for this country? And especially looking at what has happened in France, looking at what has happened in the US. These are non-politicians who've come literally, as it were, from nowhere and taken up the presidency.
I think number one, what we need to look at, the consistency of these politicians who are seeking to be our president. Then number two, probably we also look at previous opinion polls that have been there. I know they have been controversial, but look at all of them. Then probably we come up with an average figure. Then we say that if we have a presidential candidate who has not passed certain score in the previous opinion polls, then that presidential candidate does not qualify to participate in the presidential debate, because we are looking at a platform whereby Kenyans are going to look at their candidates, the people who want to rule them, under their manifesto and the policies they need to put in place, and how those policies are also going to be interrogated by the media. So that when we have a president later on, then we have a president who actually has committed and has actually explained some of the policies that he's going to put in place or she's going to put in place for the purpose of ruling this country.
I mean, just when you say that, opinion polls are also subject to manipulation. We've seen this even during the nomination process. Somebody just funds.
What I'm saying is this: however much the controversial they have been, I'm saying we look at all of them. Then we we come up with an average, because at the moment the team that is organizing the presidential debate, they might not have been in it. It has not been in place, so that they can look at put in place in the criteria. So for a start, you have to start from somewhere. So for a start, as much as these opinion polls, they have been
manipulated and maybe questionable,
and controversial, let's begin from there. Then probably as we continue, then we'll build on, and in future we'll be able to come up with the proper criteria that we'll be using in future. But from now, we must start from somewhere, because we need to meet the objective of this debate. But if we'll have 18 candidates sitting there, we will not get the objective of the debate, because we will not have enough time for these people to explain to Kenyans what they are going to do. Because the problem in Kenya is our politics are built around personalities and tribes. But we now need to shape that into issues.
Still on that same point,
yes.
Getting the objective of the agenda. Let's take a look at the 2013 presidential debate. And as we speak, the narrative already out there is that the media plays to the tune of the politicians, especially the popular politicians. And there was a lot of criticism that in 2013, the media let these presidential candidates get away with murder, so to speak, with the kind of questions that were asked and the kind of follow-up or lack of it thereof in the debate.
Yeah, but I think that's the reason why this time around the team has started the work very early, so that they can come up with the questions and interrogate those questions, so that when we'll be going there now to ask these questions, at least there's questions that have already been prepared and interrogated, so that we meet the objective of that debate.
And also the moderators. Moderators this time, I'm sure, are going to be taken through a lot of training and preparation and rehearsals. Last time, I'm sure there were no rehearsals. They didn't have enough time to even rehearse. This time, they have enough time to rehearse for this. The moderators, I'm sure, will be picked well on time, because what we're talking about, some questions going unanswered and all, it's because of the preparedness of the moderators at the time. And a lot had happened to even shake up the moderators just minutes before the debate. I mean, the presidential candidate is not going to appear. We don't know whether one of the main key candidates is coming or not. We hear that he's not coming. We have a court order. Those things destabilize somebody. And if you're a moderator of a debate, you completely are not 100% aligned to the task at hand.
All right.
I think my take on that is that I think presidential campaigns, even in the United States and developed democracy, how they begin is that even if you have 100 presidential candidates or even 10, 20, we need to start maybe with town hall meetings. And these town hall meetings are usually very important for candidates who do not meet the threshold. You can actually tell who is going to be the main contenders. And you give an opportunity to these other presidential candidates who probably might have a following, but can only appear in town hall meetings. And you can have as many town hall meetings as you want towards a presidential debate. And that's one of the things I see with our system here. We are omitting that. We're actually going direct to a presidential debate without considering that there are people who can have some following.
And I guess that would form a form of polls, as it were, when now you do the town halls.
Yeah, the town halls, yeah, absolutely. And then to that extent, maybe you'll be able to know. But also, don't forget that most of these presidential candidates are going to have pay-up adverts on TVs. And that also gives, because essentially they appear on a live platform. And a lot of people are able to see, but these people cannot interrogate. It's only maybe the moderators. But there are those who buy airtime, and they're able to put like even 10, 15 minutes, even 5 minutes
of a documentary
on an advert, giving them, articulating their policies. So I think we need to structure it in a manner that we give opportunity to all these presidential candidates at whatever level we give them, and then we have to remain with the main contenders in the bigger debate, because we know these two or these three are going up to a certain level.
Or maybe it should even start early and have an elimination process where people literally vote and say, we want this one's to continue, this one's not to continue.
But you see, Mike, I think we also need to develop a society that is serious, a society that takes the leadership very seriously, not a society that entertains mediocrity and for the purposes of meeting certain political persuasion. So that is why we need to be very clear as the media. And I think that's what happened in 2013. The media said that as far as we are concerned, we are seeing that these are the main presidential contenders, so let them put them to a debate so that we can interrogate their policies, interrogate their manifesto. But later on, the courts actually forced the media that no, that is discrimination. You have to put everybody on the board. So I think it's upon all the institutions to know that leadership must be taken very seriously in Kenya, and therefore, whenever there is a platform, we must also entertain seriousness. So we don't bring anybody for the purposes of meeting the democratic ideals.
All right. Yeah. And Eric, something, Eric Latif, there are two Erics, so I need to keep remembering which one I'm referring to. Latif, another difference in this year's presidential debates is the fact that this time there's going to be a debate specifically for running mates. Is that a good thing? And how does that also help now get to the objective?
It's a very good thing. You see, the Constitution has now placed the presidency as a team. It's a duo. So the two must be seen together. The two must be known who they are and what they stand for, and how well. Remember that the deputy president's first job is to be the alternate, to be the guy who takes over, or the lady who takes over, should anything happen to the main candidate. And the other one is, because they're together, they must work together. So having a running mates debate or a deputy presidential debate is good, because we get to also know who the deputy president is and what they stand for, whether they're actually in unison. And
whether they're aligned with
yes,
the president.
Whether the two candidates actually speak the same. You know, one could think completely different, could have completely different ideals about land ownership, for example. And another one could have a different view about how to fight corruption.
Right.
Yeah.
So you realize it's two people who literally do not have that conversation taking place. But of course, the bigger debate now is, with these presidential debates, even for the running mates, what impact are they going to have on the electorate? Are they likely to change the electorate's decision on the choice of presidential candidate? And we've asked that to our viewers this morning, and many of them saying, of course, it will not change my mind. I've already decided, ata bei ya unga ikishuka. That is Joseph Wekuke, they're saying. So what shift are these presidential debates likely to have?
I think I agree with Joseph. Not much.
Yeah, but you see, I think that is the kind of the mentality we are trying to change through such kind of forum. Because like I said before, our politics are built around personalities and tribes. So that is why probably somebody must already made up the mind that, you know, my candidate is so and so. So even if you go further, then you ask that person, why are you sticking to this person? You might not get consistency in terms of responses you are going to get from those people. So we'll start, as the media, we must start shaping the issues that are likely to influence who becomes the president. And those are now the forum like presidential debate, whereby these politicians are now supposed to put on their manifesto and policies on the table. Then we start from there and interrogate them and see what are they likely to do, other than just allowing them, you go and confuse the masses out there so that they can vote for you without knowing that, yes, we voted for you. Then when you take the position, what are you going to do? How are you going to implement the policy and the manifesto you actually had promised your voters? Because that has been the problem in Kenya. Kenya, we have got very good documents. Actually, the issue is about implementation. And when the campaign time comes, people tell us that, you know, I'm going to do ABCD, I'm going to do ABCD. Then after they have won the election, people forget. Right now, we want now to put them to task, to take them to task by putting them out there on television and radio, so that they can explain to people, so that in future we can hold them to account that during the presidential debate, this is what you said.
Yeah, and I guess this is a fantastic opportunity. There's always complaints that Kenyan politics is personality-based as opposed to issue-based. This would be a great platform now for media to put it out there and say, these are the policies, these are the things that you stand for, or rather ask them, what do you stand for?
But the danger is that I think the policies and based on ideology. I think the problem with our Kenyan politics is that it's copy and paste. Yes. You find political parties have copied and pasted each party's probably manifesto. So there's completely lack of ideology. From what the viewer is saying is that will he change his initial idea to vote for a certain candidate because he now understands the policy or the ideology that particular person subscribes to? But the risk here is that if you give opportunity to all these candidates, and you realize that there's a repetition, and that's where the issue of the running mate comes in. I don't expect a running mate to think differently from the presidential candidate, if especially that their politics is based on a certain philosophy. Because because I will come as a presidential candidate and then wait to see what my running mate is going to say. I don't expect him to be totally different from what I say. And I think that actually makes the whole stage to be very overcrowded. Because every presidential candidate with his running mate, we are talking about 23 or 40 something, appearing in different presidential debates. I think it's not actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And Eric, maybe should we also, as the media, prepare the candidates for the virtue of the fact that they may come and they are ill-prepared to deliver what is expected? Because this is meant to be a very high-level kind of debate. Literally, it's an intellectual debate, looking at the policies, looking at people who you're expecting to be your CEO for the next 5 years. Should there be a forum where we prepare the candidates?
It'll get to that level, and well, it should start from there. You know, where the amount of preparation that goes into having that debate transcends very many sectors. For example, the moderators, like we said, they need to have
Ample time
sessions and ample time. The candidates and the presidential candidates teams, they also need to sit down with this team and know what exactly are you looking for, what kind of, how much time do I get, how do I bring my point across, how do I say what I want to say. So not necessarily coaching them on what to say, but telling them this is what's expected of a presidential debate. Then let the teams go back and train their candidates and prepare their candidates on what to actually come and bring out. Using best practice, for example, where it's been tried and tested, the countries that have had debates, people coming there and saying, this is what we have noticed over time, that when a candidate comes and their body language, their speech, or they start with a confrontational yes or no answer, or they start by going round and then coming to say, finally, the answer is yes, which has a bigger impact. It's important that they get that kind of training. Even the journalists that are going to cover this debate need to be trained on what is it that you need to bring out, what are the issues that you need to report on. So it's important to have a lot of training all around. And going back to the issue of, well, it's going to have an impact. This year, it will not have an impact. In 2013, it did have an impact. It had a good, feel-good factor when we saw Abdu Badida, there, and the public was like, wow, we actually have somebody who seems to have a different frame of mind and who seems to want to do things a bit differently. Yeah, it's a good man, but he got into the polling station. It didn't change much. But over time, like Odor is saying, it should get there. We should get to a point where it becomes issue-based. However, that starts early. You cannot tell me that, we're just 2 days to the closure of candidates is when somebody is going to present himself to the IEBC. He has not even presented himself to Kenyans, and he wants to be president.
But with the kind of dissatisfaction that is being witnessed among the electorate right now, could these presidential debates have more of an impact than 2013? Because we have a very dissatisfied electorate as opposed to the situation in 2013. It's likely.
It's likely to have people who are actually going to vote, and their vote will be their voice. It's just going to say, I do not agree with so-and-so, so-and-so, so-and-so. I have seen somebody that I agree with. I'm going to put my vote in there. So very many people who would say that I'm not going to vote because who am I picking?
Yes,
I get somebody to pick.
And I can also imagine that given that right now you've got two politicians who have been in the limelight for over the past 5 years, and that is the president and opposition leader. So this is the time again also to ask them, the president, now to tell the nation that yes, you've been president for 5 years. This is what you said during the last presidential debate. What do you have to say about this? And even the opposition leader, because as opposition leader, you also have got a role to play. Did you play your role right as the leader of opposition? Did you put the government in checks? Did you put the government on toes so that some of these things can happen? So that also provides a platform people also to now have even a scorecard. What happened for the past 4 years for the people who have been there, people who have been given some responsibilities by Kenyans. So then in terms of preparation, I also think that it's also important actually even have the teams. Because you have got 3 debates here, that the first debate, what are you going to discuss, so that the candidates can be prepared and also do a little bit of research so that when they come out there, they come with some substance, other than just being ambushed and coming that, okay, today we are discussing what? What are we discussing? Oh, we are discussing economic policies. And this candidate was not prepared. So I think in terms of preparedness, I think that is very important.
All right,
Where else it will not actually influence the vote But I think it will be very important to hold presidential candidates accountable, even post the debates, because it's not necessarily going to change how people have decided to vote for their candidates. But I think the practice of presidential election and what we are going to have in our country is that it is going to put those candidates accountable, even after the election.
All right. And whether it will change the vote or not, really, that is a decision everybody will make at their own individual capacity, and that we can only speculate. But what about educating the electorate on why this is important, why it is necessary to have one? Because it's one thing to just have a highly publicized event where everybody is sitting back at home, and just like a football match, anybody can win the match. But here, this is really talking about a matter of life and death. It's talking about your future tomorrow. So, Eric, should we also prepare the electorate why this is important and what they should be looking out for?
Yes. I think it goes without saying that prior to the debates, then the media houses will actually now be training and telling us the debate is coming, and the first debate is going to be about this, and this is what you're looking out for. This is how you even gauge or judge the candidates based on their answers, based on what they say, based on their policies, interrogate them, because the public will not have an opportunity, and I think they'll only have an opportunity, maybe sending a poll or something, sending some questions, and the moderator may pick one or two, but you can continue with that debate elsewhere. You can decide, for example, locally, that you will sit down as a group, as Nyumba Kumi, as a village, and you start having these conversations and saying, so and so, this is what they were saying. And I thought I liked it, I thought I didn't like it. But I think it's important to have the public having these conversations of knowing the reason why we are watching these people is not for entertainment value. It's not for Raila to finally have an opportunity to bash Uhuru.
Right in his face.
Right in his face. Yeah. Or it's not an opportunity for, a Kuru or court to come and say we've been marginalized for long, or I'm a third force. It's not that. It is, why do I want to be president? What do I want to do?
And again, to add to what Eric has said, we should also not make elections to appear as like a fashion, whereby after every 5 years, people are going to the polls and elect leaders. We also want the electorate also to understand the reason why people go to the polls and the reason why we elect our leaders. So that is also important for the public also to understand. Then again, it should also not make the debate to appear like it's an elitist forum where people sit in Nairobi and they discuss issues about themselves and among themselves. We want also the public also to participate and move along with this debate so that we'll be able to understand by the end of the day that when we are going for elections, there's a reason why we are going for elections. It's not just an election cycle and it's a fashion that every 5 years people are supposed to vote. There must be a reason why people are voting. And that is why even the leaders themselves, even in future leaders, will start taking these leadership positions very seriously.
Let me pause you a little bit there, Odur, because we'd like to say goodbye to the KTN Home channel, who are now going to begin Life and Style. For those of us on KTN News, we continue on this debate regarding it's a newsroom, and we're looking at the presidential debate, which was announced yesterday and are going to be taking place. So of course, what we want to highlight is why it's important to you. But for those of us on KTN Home, goodbye. All right, coming to you, Evans, and this is what weighing in on what Odur has just mentioned, for it not to be an elitist kind of thing. Language becomes a player in this. Should we be considering also maybe having some of the debates in Swahili? Because chances are it's going to be in English all through.
I think the most important thing about this, and I think it's kudos to the media, is that it is widening the democratic space, and that by ensuring that the citizens participate in the electoral process. We shouldn't look at this debate just being a media event, but looking the opportunity that is going to give wananchi there to see their candidates and even to interrogate their candidates. That's the most critical thing. But I think the issue of language, I think it's very important also that participation should not actually be limited participation. It should be participation across the board. So meaning that, and I hope that both even our vernacular stations, for example, being able to have an opportunity to participate, to be able to interpret and to sensitize people on the debate so that people can actually have a following on what is going. Language is critical. I mean, we know it's English and Swahili, and I think it's going to be very important that the presidential candidates also engaged in Swahili at some point. I think whether they want to do it in the second round or the first round, or to have it in sessions. I think they have to debate in both the English and Swahili.
All
That's
right,
very
Odur,
critical.
closing comments and maybe what should be expected.
Yes, I agree that I think the candidates should be given the leeway either to answer questions either in English or Kiswahili so that the masses can be able to understand what they are saying. Then I also hope that the presidential debate in the future will have an impact in our elections. And I saw like what happened in Uganda. President Museveni ignored the first one. And given that it was successful and he saw that it's something that is likely to change the minds of Ugandans, he participated in the second one. So I'm hoping that even in Kenya, that is the directions we are taking in the future, we'll be seeing the impact of these debates.
All right, Eric, closing comments.
First of all, for a long time, it's like a normal thing, bar talk and all. Media is always bashed, you give too much airtime to two people, to personalities. But this is an instance where the media is actually taking the lead in shaping opinion, in trying to be at the forefront of saying, look, let's discuss non-partisan issues. And one, we should be congratulated. The media should actually be told, kudos, you've done a good job. Media houses coming together is a big thing. Media houses dedicating their resources, their airtime, because it's going to be across TV and radio on most of the stations. It's a very big thing. It's something that the candidates should take seriously, and they should work hand in hand with a team that's been preparing this for a long time. I think it's about time that all the campaign teams reach out to the organizing committee and say, we'd like to participate, we'd like to know how best to prepare our candidates for this and to participate fully. And for the public, it's also good to now start looking at the issues being articulated there, to start interrogating things on issues and not on personality.
All right, thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us this morning for the newsroom. Eric Latif, who's a journalist, Eric Odur, who's the Secretary General for Kenya Union of Journalists, and last but not least, Evans Ofula, who is also a journalist. That's where we wind up Newsroom this morning, but do stay with us right here on KTN News. We've got some news updates coming up later on, but also within the next hour, find out how we are doing on road carnage, and we'll be looking at some facts and figures from NTSA on how we're doing on road carnage and where possibly we need to improve. So do stay with us right here on KTN News.